Stuart McSkimming is the Chief Information Officer for the incredible Royal British Legion. Whilst we have our own experiences moving to remote working, only a handful have had responsibility, not just for themselves, but 1,500 others. Stuart, who actually lives in Brighton, will be discussing the Royal British Legion's move to remote working. It's a top story with a dose of cybercriminal activity thrown in for good measure.
Hello, my name's Stuart McSkimming and I'm the Chief Information Officer at the Royal British Legion. I'm delighted to be talking at Silicon Brighton as a long-term Brighton resident. One small upside to the current situation we have is that I'm no longer commuting to and from London, so I get an extra few hours in a day. So this gives me time to give interesting talks, such as discussing our moving to distributed working. So before I talk about that, I would just like to tell you a little bit about my organisation. So probably one of the things we're most well known for is the festival Remembrance. This is run every year in November at Royal Albert Hall. But alongside that, we also run a variety of services for veterans, including 6 care homes, an advice and support service through a national network of pop-in centres. We offer nursing assistance through our network of Admiral nurses, and we also offer support with independent living for veterans. We have around 1,500 staff, some of those work in care homes, but a lot of those work in office type jobs. And one of the challenges we've had with our generally office-based staff is working out how we could get them working remotely. So how did we prepare? Well, at the start of February, we started looking into exactly what we had in terms of our remote access capabilities and reviewing it. We became aware that there was a small chance that staff may have to work from home for certain periods of time. Back in February, we predicted that it wouldn't be longer than 1 month. However, we still had it as a fairly low probability, but we wanted to understand were there things we could do which were low cost, but would enable us to work from home more easily if it were required. On the positive side of things, we were already using the Office 365 environment. We weren't using it very much. We were using it for Exchange, Outlook, email, as many people were, and we had some plans in place to roll out Microsoft Teams, OneDrive, and some of the other collaboration tools later on in the year. On the negative side of things, we had an outdated remote access environment. So one of the things that we wanted to really understand as part of our planning was how well people could work from home. And so one of the things we asked them to do is actually we asked people to see if they had the right equipment to run trials and, if necessary, to request laptops. We also decided we better accelerate our plans around replacing our remote access environment for staff working at home. By the time we got to the 12th of February, we'd realised as an organisation that there was a strong chance that there might be some disruption. So we declared a serious incident and we started to make contingency plans. Within our care homes, they were already well into their planning and they had well-rehearsed plans around infection control. Within care homes, they quite regularly have infections they have to deal with, and so are pretty adept at handling situations like this. Obviously, COVID-19 could be on a different scale for them, but their plans were reasonably robust. As an organisation, however, we were pretty used to the status quo of working in an office, as were many others, and we had to put some effort into trying to ensure we had the right equipment and the right software available. If we move forward 3 weeks to the 3rd of March, when things were already beginning to look like there was definitely going to be some change coming, at that point, we'd issued just over 100 new laptops to staff in a 3-week period, which was pretty much a record for us in terms of rolling out equipment. We realised that stocks were running low within the UK of laptops because we weren't the only ones who were trying to do this, and it was compounded by the fact that China, as a manufacturer of laptops, wasn't manufacturing laptops at nearly the same rate they were before. However, we weren't as concerned as we might be because we didn't actually have any outstanding requests at that point. We thought we'd successfully got staff to request laptops and issued them. By the time we got to 10th of March, we had actually run out of laptops at that point, and it was also becoming apparent that there may well be an extended period of working from home by the time we got to the 10th of March. On the 16th of March, that was the date when the government made various announcements asking staff to work from home if they could. And as an organisation, we told staff that they should prepare, or they should be working from home for the foreseeable future. So on the 7th of March, then the very next day, our head office in London Bridge was much quieter than normal. I went into the office and there were probably about 20 to 30 staff in the office. And we were really just in support mode, trying to ensure that staff had the equipment they needed, giving out things like headsets here, the new essential item for everyone, making sure that we could help any staff who had laptops they needed assistance with. And we found that over the following days that we kept a couple of support staff in the office just so as they could help out any staff if they needed. Obviously, this was before the more comprehensive lockdown a few days later. We did find that we were giving quite a bit of support to staff. There were several staff who had laptops that had been at the back of their cupboards and they discovered that they no longer worked when they got them out. There were simple problems like some staff didn't have broadband. Whilst we'd considered did they need a laptop, we couldn't really do much about staff who didn't have broadband installed. And there were other issues that people would have, just more fundamental issues. So perhaps their laptop, they did have a laptop, but there were some things that didn't work on it, or it was out of date, or perhaps it didn't work very well. We even found that there were some staff who were working on their own equipment and trying to get things to work, and it turns out that some of them were running Windows 7, which was a surprise given it's gone out of support on their home device, but some people were running Windows XP, which was even more of a surprise. And so we tried to give people help where they could. So that was the 17th of March as we got used to this. By the 18th of March, we thought not so bad. It was been busy, but we were probably still in the denial stage, I'd probably say there, as the world was changing. But on the 18th of March, something else happened. We became aware of a significant cyber threat against our organisation. Now, I know lots of organisations have struggled a bit with phishing attempts and cyber threats since the move to working from home. It's a whole different environment where you have staff using company laptops, but also using their own devices, and not being in the office where they can simply turn around to another person and ask them, is this normal? Have you got this email? Should I click on this? Shouldn't I click on this? So following that, we had to take quite a few steps to increase our security and rebuild some of our remote working environments, which really made things quite challenging for us as an IT team, given we'd already been working pretty hard trying to get everyone working remotely. And on the second day of remote working, we then had to rebuild lots of our remote working environments. So that really took us quite a bit of extra time. But once we'd got through that, we then moved into the next phase, which was really about trying to ensure that staff could work and collaborate as best as possible. And this was really about taking an existing project that we had and turbocharging it, giving it a shot of adrenaline. So we had already a project where we'd planned to put forward a business case to roll out some of the Office 365 products, such as Yammer, OneDrive, SharePoint, and Teams. And the plan had been that we would get a business case to our board by the 14th of April, and this would detail a rollout over the following year. As it happened, we realized that this was just way too slow, and actually that this was going to Teams, the use of Microsoft Teams would be a game changer for us as an organization if we could get these tools out there. So we took a decision that rather than trying to get the business case by the 14th of April, we would actually try and go live by the 14th of April. This was quite a change for us in the way we worked, and quite a change for us as an organisation. But we thought that people have a very strong need and will to make the change, and working with the partner that we were already working with on Office 365 we already had quite a bit of background information that would help us with taking some fairly quick governance decisions and decisions on training, decisions about how we might roll it out, how we might structure teams and departments and groups, and how we would be able to offer all the support that we needed to. So this was probably one of the most interesting rollouts that I think I've ever done in my life. And we did manage to achieve it. And I've now started to ask myself questions about perhaps have we taken too much of a relaxed approach for rollouts in the past? It's interesting how you can move on and change. So I guess thinking about things, unfortunately, it's not 28 days later because that would have made things perfect. It's actually 35 days later now as I'm recording this talk. However, in that time, we have launched and trained our organization on Teams, OneDrive, and Yammer. We've retired our old remote access solution and replaced it with Windows remote desktop services. We've introduced multi-factor authentication for all of our external access. We've managed to keep some of our business as usual projects going, such as we were in the process of replacing our wide area network, and this became business critical, particularly for our care homes, because we wanted to be able to ensure that we gave them the best connections possible when they're dealing with some very challenging circumstances, and we're making a lot more use of Skype calls and being able to talk to people when perhaps they were under lockdown and they couldn't actually get staff in or out of their buildings. So that was particularly interesting. We kept that project going. There were other projects which we managed to keep just about on the road. We did put several things on hold. But one of the most interesting things is we've had an awful lot of feedback, and predominantly this has been very good feedback. Feedback from very encouraging staff who've said they've been really helped by the changes we put in place and the support we've been able to give them. We haven't had all 100% good feedback. We've had some people who've struggled, and one thing particularly we've noticed is that when you're in an office environment, you can always go and turn to your friend or your colleague. If you're having problems getting something to work, you can ask them for advice. But when you're working from home, that's not always possible. So people have struggled, some people with lower levels of IT literacy, or perhaps even just where they've got equipment that hasn't worked as well, and we've had to give them a lot more support. And so we haven't managed to completely ace out on our fantastic feedback, because we have had some challenging feedback as well. But overall, we're feeling that we've made some amazing changes in a very short period of time, which we don't feel we would have ever achieved in any other environment. And really, it's been the support of our staff and the willingness of people to accept change. And I think for me, that has been probably my biggest learning point of this, that I think often we talk about organizational capacity for change, and we look at some of the exercises and projects and initiatives we're undertaking as an organization, and we wonder, can staff within the organization cope with this level of change? And I think what I've learned over the last month is that people are so much more adaptable than you realize or you remember when you're in your everyday life. And if necessary, people will adapt. And so organizational capacity for change has ballooned in the last month, and we've brought in so many changes, and staff have all had to deal with working remotely. But ultimately now we do find that we have got an organization which is functioning remotely, whereas I think if you'd asked me in January to pull together a project to get us all working remotely by mid-April, I think I would have said it was impossible. I think most of our senior management would have said it was impossible. So it's been a very interesting set of challenges we've had. Normally at this talk I say any questions, but I think probably this format is probably will allow maybe online questions or questions grouped together at the end. I do really hope you found my story interesting. As I said, my name's Stuart McSkimming. I'm the Chief Information Officer at the Royal British Legion, and I thank you for taking the time to listen to my talk today.